as far as getting that as a goal for our practice, for everything, to make it routine, daily in our practice. So my son took this video back in August, and this video is of the solar eclipse that happened. He had to go up to Clemson, Georgia to take it. And the reason why I put it up there is because he's merging technologies when he's doing this. And he bought a $100 solar telescope, bought a little iPhone bracket, and then he took his iPhone and put it on right on the optics. Merged all these inexpensive technologies. Well, the iPhone is expensive, but he had that anyway. And he took something that's rather competitive with things that cost tens of thousands of dollars that are producing videos of these things. So I always think of, that's our role now, is merging technologies. How do we step forward to merge all these technologies to satisfy our patient needs? Because we're moving away from a time from where patient needs are adapted to one technology. That's all we had for decades. And now, from here on out, it's all about taking multiple technologies, blending them together to satisfy patient needs and desires. And notice I say desires because of this.
So we all know that everybody now wants everything instantaneously. Our competition really isn't the orthodontist on the street anymore. Our competition is for time and for the perception of patients of what is expected. So, you know, there's the 6-month smiles, fast braces, Smile Direct Club where they can treat themselves at home, and there's more than one of those flavors available. McDonald's is kind of the standard of fast foods, and my kids, as much as we know that it's not the most nutritious meal on the planet, every child in the world now, if they think about going somewhere to eat, they're going to McDonald's for 2 reasons. They know what they're going to get, and they know it's going to be quick. To that point, YouTube has kind of changed the world as far as looking for resources. I was fixing something in the house the other day, and I'm going through Google looking for some instruction set on how to take care of this. My 14-year-old daughter walks up to me, as only a 14-year-old can, goes, "Here, Daddy, look at this video." And so that's their expectation, that somebody has done it and they can do it quickly and not have to search around to find the information. And so when patients come in the office, they don't think they should be in treatment for more than a year. I remember when I started practice, you ask, "Okay, well, how long do you expect to wear your braces?" "Oh, I don't know, 2.5 years. Now they come in and go, "About a year."
Yep.
And adults are even more focused.
Adults don't want to be in braces for more than 2 Christmases. They don't want to see their families twice in braces. When are you getting those things off? You know, they don't want to undergo that. And if that wasn't bad enough, you can even get retainers online now on Amazon. I mean, you know, everything's available. If you want it, search for it. So here's our primary demographic that we serve. If you think about the total space on this slide, that's everybody in North America, the United States. You roughly have, obviously, 330 million people, and this is that space that it occupies. But if you isolate for need, desire, and ability to pay, you get roughly 12 million people. The problem is we treat all of the kids that have need, desire, and ability. We pretty much penetrated that market. So anything that we're going to do is going to be in the adult market space. So everything from here on out is about adults. We're only treating less than 1 million a year now as far as adults are concerned. We have 9 million that are available for us to treat that we can market to and satisfy. And that's the space that everybody on this floor is going for from here on out. So what do adults expect? If you're going to treat them, you need to realize that over a quarter right now walking around are unhappy with their smile. Another 20% are also dissatisfied with their smile, and they had correction. Now that speaks volumes in my mind about what we need to do as far as quality of treatment. The smile has now become the most noticed feature above eyes. 67% think they're never too old for orthodontic treatment. Think about that when you're marketing towards adults and when you're trying to satisfy adults. 87% would forego something for a year just to straighten their teeth. That's pretty impactful. So how do we get there? How do we get to that market space? Pretty simple. 12 months or less. Survey after survey shows that if you could satisfy them in less than 12 months, and the goal here is not total treatment, The goal here is time in the most onerous part of the appliances, which is brackets. So we all know that brackets are onerous, so let's get them out as fast as we can. Let's find ways to do that.
And so because of that expectation, what we've looked at is ways to eliminate errors in the process. You know, when I was in training, when all of us were, we learned the teeth move around a millimeter a month. And I can remember, you know, Lyle Johnson saying that orthodontics is a 6 millimeter specialty. So if it's a 6 millimeter specialty and teeth move a millimeter a month, why on earth are we taking that long to treat patients? And if we go back and look at it, it's because all the way along, we're not actually working with biology efficiently. What we're doing is doing certain movements and taking 2 steps forward and 1 step back as we correct errors along the way. One way that I've looked at it, that Jeff and I have talked about, is, you know, I have my pilot's license, even though my wife doesn't let me fly anymore. But you know, when I first learned to fly, you have a map, and you're reading the landmarks on the map, and you're kind of following along what's there on the ground, and you end up getting there, right? Kind of like traditional orthodontics would, you know, you move along, make an adjustment, the patient comes back in, you go, okay, now from there we move to this next point, then from there we move to this next point, versus the commercial pilot that flew all of us here. They put it in the computer ahead of time, straight line, you get there, it's faster, more comfortable, easier, and at the end of the day, just a much better experience. And so that's the same as orthodontics. You're trying to eliminate the errors to have a better experience for the patient and our teams. And I don't think any orthodontist on the planet brags about the patient that took the longest to treat. Because the longer they're in treatment, the less likely they're going to have a really stunning result. We all reach a point where it's like, let's just get finished here before something bad happens. And so the patients that tend to finish early and efficiently all have stunning end results. And that's what we're trying to do on a routine basis.
And part of making that routine is to establish a workflow in your office that works in and out. So no matter where we are in treatment, no matter what system we're in, our staff and we know exactly where they are in their workflow. And you'll notice over here in this area, this is basically the Motion 3D area. That is when we're correcting all of our APs in our clinics now. So if they come in and they're Class 2, Class 3, or Class 2 tendency, they're getting a Motion 3D appliance. And so we're going to walk through that, but this is kind of the link pin of where we unlock the efficiency of getting out of treatment even faster. Then we go into aligners, brackets. We don't even have to choose when we put the Motion 3D in place which way we go. We can leave that decision downstream after the initial appointment. They can test out that lower aligner that they're going to have, or lower retainer that they're going to have in, and mom and dad can sit there and say, yep, Johnny's going to wear aligners, or nope, Johnny can't wear aligners because they just don't keep up with that lower stem.
And so because we go from a Class 2 or Class 3 platform to a Class 1 platform, everything becomes simplified. If we're going to use brackets and wires, we don't need multiple prescriptions because we're not fighting elastics during the course of treatment. So that means we have one precise prescription that we use to finish that, and we can shorten the intervals of treatment because we're not doing other things at the same time. If we choose to go to aligners, then we're starting with a Class 1 platform, so we actually have fewer aligners. And if we look at what we've done in the past, you know, Jeff and I laugh when we look at this because we have both used every one of these Class 2 correctors, and in the South where we live, we end up with voodoo and prayer at the end. And just go, please, please, please wear your rubber bands, and then we'll be done. And you go on for about a year with these teenagers, and are you wearing them? Kinda. Are you wearing them? Mom's going, no, they're not. And finally, after it seems like forever, they'll wear the rubber bands for 6 or 8 weeks. You can come back in and go, okay, guess what, you're done. And without exception, they'll roll their eyes and say, oh, if I had known it was that easy, I would have done it a year ago. So instead, what we're doing now is capturing that energy at the beginning with Sagittal first.
And again, as far as making that decision, it handles onboarding a lot easier. Using the Sagittal first approach, Dave and I now have a same-day start culture within our practice where it is a real low entry point. So for the practice, not only just the patient. So it's only a 10 to 15 minute onboarding problem, for the problem, not really, it's on 10 to 15 minutes less of a problem in our practice instead of an hour of bonding, upper lower 5 to 5 or upper lower 6 to 6. So the intake is a lot easier, and then we don't have to have a discussion as far as the aligners are concerned. Again, we can move in and out of that, and that could be something that we put downstream after a couple of appointments. The kids can tell us what they want. We can even, with our scanners, we can even make that decision the day they come in to either get brackets or turn around and get scanned for aligners.
So, it makes a lot of sense to do this because when patients come in, every single time they go, do I get my braces today? They don't go, can I go through a long process and maybe get my braces on 6 or 8 or 10 weeks from now while you figure out the treatment plan and get all your records and everything else? So, when I trained as an orthodontic resident, we had one faculty member who made us decide the treatment plan right there and then. And he told us that the records were only there to verify what we could do clinically. And he goes, you never have more information than you do with the patient living and breathing right in front of you. And everything else is just to verify that. And so this actually allows us to live that every single day. The patient's more excited, so they go from the exam room to starting. And if they're going to get sagittal first, then we do the scan and deliver the motion, or sometimes just simply do the scan and they come back a day or two later to have the motion on, depending. But the patients are excited at the beginning, and so we use that excitement to get the sagittal corrected initially.
Now, as far as the bonding appointment is concerned, you can see you've got a series of just 20-minute appointments now. You're not really taxing the schedule no matter which way we go. Removing motion, bonding the anteriors, it's really just 20 minutes. Deliver the Essex, bonding the motion, it's just 20 minutes. So all these procedures are separated up, but they're separated up in a low impact way on your practice.
Matter of fact, we don't even have a start appointment on our scheduling because that did two things. One, you have these big blocks of time. Someone gets sick or something comes up at school and they can't come in for the start appointment. You really can't fill it with anything else. It's not like general dentistry where you have like a waiting list for hygiene appointments or whatever. So that block of time goes empty, and then you have to figure out where to squeeze them in later. Or if the patient wants to start right away and you don't have that hour or hour and a half available, then all the clinical staff are like running like ants away from it because they don't want to be the one that put the schedule behind.
Rolling their eyes all at the same time.
So this allows us to use exactly the same time frame as an arch wire change or anything else. And it's much easier for the patient and for the staff.
And we'll go over later on how that also impacts our debonding protocol as well, because that pretty much ends up being the same way.
So we're going to show a couple of patients. So this young lady obviously came in, she's 11 and a half. She's class 2, deep bite, midline's off a little bit. So we're going to correct the sagittal first using the motion. And it takes about 3 months with compliance. Now, the mechanism of action, now has been studied a couple of times, and it's essentially variations on every other class 2 corrective. So there's no magic here or anything else. We're not growing mandibles in 3 months. That doesn't happen, all right? They're not posturing forward. We have cone beams that show before and after where the condyles are. We're moving teeth in all 3 planes of space, which is why they changed it from the distalizer to the motion 3D. All right, so go on to the next slide.
But one of the things I will say is it's not typical for most class 2 correctors in the sense that you're not purely moving in the AP. It is one of the only that I'm aware of, besides maybe headgear properly used, where you're actually changing the occlusal plane. Okay, and that's part of the AP change. Luis constantly comes up here and he talks about how you're moving the mandible forward. Well, part of that movement is changing the occlusal plane. So when you do that, if you look at the mathematics of that, you don't need a huge AP change to make a very small change if you also have an angular change built into it.
So here it is with the motion in place when it's ready to remove. Notice several things. The spaces between the upper incisors now, her bite head's open, as well as the fact that we have nice rounded out arches, because what happens is those arms act like a buccal shield. you'll actually see the canine, the premolars space and move out a little bit during the course of treatment. When they're finished with the motion, at minimum, the upper canine should be in solid contact with the lower premolar. That is minimum correction. The bigger the sagittal problem, the more exaggerated you want to go with overcorrection, because we know those teeth rebound because they move so quickly, right? So this is at minimum what we would consider the sagittal correction. Keep going. Okay. So now we're ready for her braces. Here's her profile. You can see how we got a nice little profile change for her as well. Her braces go on. I bond upper and lower 4 to 4 at the first visit. Jeff does 5 to 5. We do that because it's short and simple. I also don't like repair appointments. So the most frequent repair appointments in an office is a wire poke or loose molar brackets. So if we don't put them on, they can't break them off. And if the wires don't go back, then we don't get a wire poke. Then we see them 3 or 4 weeks later and add the molar brackets and go into the next size of wire, which is here. One of the things that you'll notice is you can put the chains over the wire with these brackets, which makes it better hygiene. And if you need to change the chains, it's a shorter appointment because you don't have to take the wire out. Here we are moving along. She has one loose bracket that we're going to repair. She's lost her correction just a tiny bit, so I'll have her start wearing rubber bands just at night to support that. Here she is now. She's in her rectangular copper nine ties. She's 5 months from when we moved from the motion. Notice the control and everything else that we have. The rotations are all out. Keep going. And here she is finished. 10 months of brackets and wires. This is what we schedule routinely. In the absence of an impacted canine or something really unusual, like an impacted second molar or things like that, we estimate on every patient 10 months of treatment time or less in fixed appliances. And it's not magic, we're just simply eliminating errors along the way.
I'm not quite there yet. I'm not as good as Dr. Paquette. A couple months off. It's a remarkable result. Good job, Dave. Okay, here's one of our patients. She reports definitively class 2. And in my old protocol, she would have been a Hurst. So she would have been 24 to 30 months at minimum, and I would have also had to deal with all the negative sequelae from my Hurst appliance. So here she is, bond her up on the upper slides, on the lower slides, after 2 months of the motion appliance. Now I want you, seriously, 2 months. It's remarkable. Now one thing I will highlight is that right there. Do not be intimidated by the gingival response there, because you'll see in the next photos, it just resolves. Yep. Okay, here she is after 4 months in the motion appliance and 4.5 months in SLX. She's in, go ahead. Yeah.
One of the things that I want to point out here is early on, we always used to run chains 6 to 6s. We spent so much time getting these 6s rotated and uprighted into the right position. You do not want to connect chains to the 6s. You want to go 5 to 5 or 7 to 7. We go 5 to 5 in the copper nine tie wires, and then 7 to 7. Now it's hard for assistants to unlearn that because they've been taught all the way through that chains go 6 to 6, and now you have to make sure that they don't make that error because of habits.
And that happens, obviously. I'm sorry? Did I rotate the bicuspid? Oh, going to 5 only? No, you really don't. We really don't see that. And one of the reasons is because the door is, in the SLX system, it's almost wide. In the SLX 3D, it's as wide as the base of the bracket. So you have a very rigid door that you just don't rotate into. It's unlike, the Q bracket where the door is pretty skinny. So you have a lot of room to derotate that tooth into it. So I lost a little efficiency in this case because I bonded for 7s. They weren't quite erupted when we started. So here she is at just 12.5 months. You see that the lower arch wire is out on this case. That's because this is my pre-debond appointment. We'll go into detail on that earlier or later. So she's 16 months total, but only 12 months in the brackets. And then here she is all completed. Having a little delay on the clicker, sorry. Very nice. Nice occlusion. And we see this occlusion, and I'll highlight it later on in some other cases. Because of the passive self-ligation system, the SLX 3D, and all that, this is the day of debond. And we see this routinely where their occlusion is just settled in.
All right, here's another young lady, and you'll see it's going to be almost exactly the same process. So she has a little bit of crowding. She's already class 1, so she doesn't require a motion first. So we go ahead and bond her up. This would be when she's partly through treatment. So what I want you to notice is how quickly, because of the design of the brackets, how quickly that canine uprights between this appointment and the next appointment, right? It's just remarkable. And that's all because of the precision manufacturing, right? Nothing magic or different. Now, she's not in occlusion here when they took the picture. Sorry about they pulled her cheek too hard. Go ahead. All right, so here she is when she's getting ready to get debonded. I use Triad bite turbos on the lower 6s in every patient. I use Pink Triad because, one, it's easy to place. It doesn't have any filler in it, so it doesn't abrade the opposing tooth cusp. And it's clear or translucent, so I can make sure it's not leaking when it's on there, so we don't get decalcification around it.
And we bond bite turbos in the upper 6s in our office. And the reason why is because you just don't have to worry about the tongue being in the way.
So here she is, ready to debond. I've made a few little minor adjustments, and there she is when she's finished. Now imagine, she was 10 months of treatment. You can see the puffiness of her gums. If she had been in braces for 2 years, think about the catastrophe that we'd be dealing with when we debonded and all the explanation to the parents with decalcification. So she had a very slight amount on that canine, but my guess would be if we had her in treatment for another year, it would have been global. And those things are just really hard to live with.
So here's another case for emotion. This young man comes in, I would call that severe crowding. Constricted, a little bit of a constricted maxilla and mandible, moderate crowding on the lower. Mom gives me one qualifier. I don't want teeth removed. That's the qualifier. And this is where I'm very thankful for Luis in bringing the motion appliance to us, because I don't think I would have had another good option. I mean, what am I going to do? Put a Herbst appliance and advance his mandible with that? You know, and then all the negative sequelae on lower ones that are already tipped forward a little bit too much. So we're going to step through the case. I'm going to accelerate a little bit because I don't want to bore everybody. I will say, don't do this. Oh, thought that was on. Don't bond on the upper 3s in this case when they're this high. Don't do my mistake. Now, there was only one negative sequelae from it. I'll highlight it in a minute. But go to the upper 4s. Okay, we call those shorties. And bond the upper 4s, it'll work just as efficient, bonding to the upper 4s. We routinely do that now. You'll see the upper right 6 in this case will get pushed into crossbite, and it's because of the vector of the elastic pulling down on the motion appliance.
So the question is, do you go to the 7s if you bond the 4s? No, you still go to the 6s. It's a shorter one, right? And what happens is and it's now my go-to for impacted canines or blockout canines to make room with that rather than springs and wires and flare out the incisors. So as you move those back, the interceptal fibers will actually pull the canines down into place.
And I've got another rule of thumb I use all the time. You'll see in this case those 7s are just partially erupted. It just produces too many inflammatory problems with an elastic all the way there. If it's accessible, sometimes I will go to the 7, but by routine I do exactly what Dave does, go to the 6. Okay? Here he is at 1 month, 2.5 months. You'll start seeing that 6. See now it's edge to edge on the right hand side. 3.5 months. Look at the crossbite that I generated. Okay? But because of passive self-ligation and all the advantages that we enjoy from it, we get out of that crossbite pretty predictable in this case. 5 months of motion, 1 month SLX. 3 months SLX. Bonded up my molars. You can see up, reaching to that upper right 6. 4 months SLX. Panex repos. And we use the 2020 arch wire. That's our arch wire choice for edgewise, our initial edgewise wire. We don't use 1425, 1825. I go 2020 and then 1925 night tie. And if we could skip that night tie and go 2020 to the TMA, we'll do that as well.
I do the same.
So 10 months, look at this, 10 months total. We've corrected class 1, we've leveled and aligned, and now I get to worry about detailing for the rest of the time. So here we go through detailing the case. 1925 night tie. TMAs. 9 months only in SLX. Here, pre-debond appointment, bond the lower 3 to 3, take the lower arch wire out. 12 months SLX. 13 months total after debond. I'll take that any day of the week when you give constraints of no extractions. If I want to be critical, I probably lost about 3 degrees on my lower ones. So 18 months total on a case that easily would have been 2 years to 2.5 years on my old protocols. There's the comparison. Nice full smile, very happy mom, very happy young man.
So we're able to do a lot of these things because of the precision manufacturing of the SLX. There's a lot of advantages that we have. The width of the doors, the precision of the bracket slot, and the bonding bases. All those things make it very simple to accomplish this and shorten the arch wire intervals as we go through changes. So here's another patient, very simple. This is actually the first patient I ever treated with SLX.
I didn't know that.
And go ahead, and here we are going through it. And in 8 months, he was in 1925 copper night ties. Now he would be there sooner because we use a 2020 rather than a 1425, 1925. His total time in treatment was 10 months. I, being in the trenches and just going back and forth, didn't realize how efficient we were finishing patients. It was my staff who pointed out to me that the patients with SLX brackets are finishing in less than a year, like all the time. No, you're kidding me. And so they ran reports and showed me, and they were the ones that convinced me, because I was making their life so easy because they didn't have all these extra visits and stuff. One of the things that you'll find, and we'll talk about more, is that you have one shortcoming in doing this. Because if your schedule is built with, let's say, patients on a 2-year treatment program, and all of a sudden you have a group of patients finishing in a year, imagine a middle school, you have all the 6th graders, right? And they're waiting for the 7th graders to graduate so they can move into the classroom, right? Otherwise there's no room for them. And all of a sudden, they leapfrog from being in the 5th grade to the 7th grade. You've got all these kids at the same time in the same classrooms. That's what happens at debonds, right? So all of a sudden, if you finish in a year, you got to add an entirely new protocol for taking off braces, or you won't have place in the schedule. But after you process that for a year, what happens is you're standing around looking at each other because you've got all these holes in the schedule that weren't there before. Because now you don't have 2 layers of patients going through the day, first-year patients and second-year patients. These patients are gone, and they're all first year. So all of a sudden, you have room on the schedule you've never had before. And you can either use that to see more patients, you can use that to go out and go golfing, you can
use that to open another practice.
Whatever you want to do, because it's just that much more efficient. But be prepared for that first year of differential.
Okay, I'm going to start accelerating a little bit. Here's a young lady that comes in, and the hallmark of her case is she wants expansion. She has a tapered upper arch form, and that is her chief complaint. And so we come in, take a look at her case, and what I want you to notice is how her occlusion settles in. Like I said, I'm just going to step through this. Turbos on the upper 6s, 4 1425. This is back when I was using a 1425, 1925. When I transitioned over from a Damon philosophy, and so I just applied my Damon philosophy when I transitioned over. You just change the bracket. You know, you don't have to be intimidated by it, changing everything if you don't want to in your office. Pan-X repos, 1825s. Repo the upper right lateral. You can see the movement in the wire there. 1925s. Everything's settling in nice. Up. So here she is after 12 months. Very much in good control. Nice posterior occlusion. Very happy with that result. And didn't have to waste time with long-term treatment, long-term gingival inflammation, and all the negative sequelae that comes from that. Okay.
All right, one last patient. Go ahead. So again, she's class 1, you know, very simple. And so the idea here is to not make errors along the way. So we're just going to go walk our way through these arch wires. And again, I did the same thing as when I first started. I used my same arch wire sequence.
Yep. There's it to the 6.
Yep, because it was one of our first patients.
Of course.
Yep. And so here we are going through. Now she's getting ready to go into TMAs, and there she is finished. 10 months of treatment. So it's the same thing over and over again. This is what we expect.
And I think I have one more relatively straightforward case. I'm just going to step through it. Again, this is just standard self-ligation cases. 2 months in our 018s, 4 months, 1425s, K9s come down. Power chaining upper 2 to 2.
But no more 3 or 4 months finishing, making arch wire adjustments after arch wire adjustments, because when you make them, what you get back is what you expect.
And on her, I think we had a little bit of a problem with showing for appointments on the tail end, so it increased her treatment time distal, right there at 14 months. For whatever reason, she didn't want her braces off. So here she is all finished up. Nice arch form, good posterior occlusion.
And it's interesting, before we would have kind of an 18-month aha check to make sure that we weren't going to be running over treatment. Now after even at a year, we're reading through the chart to see what might be going on.
Yep.
So Jeff and I published this article along with Scott Fry where we took 12 consecutive Q finishes and 12 consecutive SLX finishes from each practice. So there were 72 patients total because we were noticing these things. So we called the office and had staff members pull the records on 12 consecutive finishes. So these were not cherry-picked at all. And what we found was the same efficiencies in all 3 practices. So you can just run through these. These are the things we looked at. And the take-home here,
sorry
back
about
up
that.
one. The take-home here was that overall, the Q patients were in treatment 2.1 times as many months as the SLX, which means the SLX patients were finishing in half the time. And the only reason for that is elimination of errors from from the beginning to the end.
Another hallmark of this particular study is that you're dealing with 2 practices that just transition. So usually it takes 2 years to onboard a new bracket system and get used to the nuances, get used to the placement, all those things as clinicians that are frustrating by onboarding a new system. We didn't even see that.
And so this is all the time-saving comparison all the way through, and all 3 practices almost mirrored each other. It was really unsettling.
All this transfers into profitability.
So, you know, people question, well, were these cherry-picked and everything else? Is the data mined slightly differently? So what I did, actually on Friday, is I did a frame grab from my office management system, and this shows the income per appointment, right? This is when I was 100% Q. This is where I changed, and you can see the income per appointment as we eliminated all those legacy patients and we're solely into the SLX patients. 2018 is only partial data, that's why that drops off. But this is directly from the practice management system, and as you know, once the time and money go in there, you can't change it. So this is just a direct screen grab. So what's different is we've eliminated those long treatment intervals between appointments. So instead of 8 to 10 weeks, we're now at 6 weeks early on, and then in the finishing appointments, which is starting with the rectangular copper night ties, we're down to 4 weeks early on. So we eliminate time at the beginning, eliminate time at the end, and in the middle, and we don't have all those finishing appointments. So we can do same-day starts, get these folks going, and confidently tell them, look, you can be done in a year.
So here's our standard, our wire protocol. Upper 4 to 4, I do upper 6 to 6. Next appointment we bond 6s and 7s. Dave bonds the 5 through the 7s. Then we go into, I go into 1425, then 1925 copper night tie. Then we have our Panex repo appointment, 1925 CNA or TMA, and then we have a couple of detailing appointments. And all that translates into less than 10 to 12 months of treatment.
But imagine if we can reduce that.
Yeah.
So both Jeff and I have eliminated essentially this 1925 copper night tie because we can easily transition from the 2020 to the CNA. And so what we've done is brought this down, so it's about 8 months now.
And the only reason we can transition to the 2020 is because the door width accommodates the total bracket width. So if without that level of the door being wide enough, the 2020 is not as efficient of an arch wire in passive self-ligation systems. And now we have the 3D clear. This is it in the mouth. A beautiful bracket. And basically, Henry Schein took everything that was negative about the SLX and basically improved upon it, and they kept everything that was positive about the old SLX bracket. The width, the curvature of the base, everything, the fact that the brackets fit intimately to the tooth, and they enhanced that and added more. You can see this bevel that's all the way around circumferentially. The engineers added that in so that we could take off the bracket a lot easier. And basically, the engineers describe it as crack propagation of the composite going all the way under the bracket. You just get to engage that earlier.
And the foundation for all this is sagittal first.
Yep.
And the nice thing is we can go into aligners or brackets. We do that. So I'm going to show you a couple of align patients. So this kid's 11 years old, class 2. What we're going to do is go through sagittal first. He's going to become a class 1 platform. You notice two things happen. His bite opens, and he gets spaces between his upper incisors so that the aligners can wrap around him so they're more efficient. And he was 4 months of motion, and he's going to have 8 months of aligners. We don't have to do refinement because the aligners grab those upper incisors without all the subsequent problems that we normally would have. Go ahead. And so here he is at the end of his series of aligners, and you notice that his total treatment time, again, was less than a year. And so we really don't care which platform it is, because if you take care of the sagittal first, everything else takes care of itself.
Very nice.
Here's another young man, same thing. It's just variations on a theme. Class 2.
It almost gets boring, doesn't it?
Yeah. So, again, sagittal first. Here he is with his motion, ready to come off. Now we're going to switch to the aligners. I did a tiny bit of IPR in his upper incisors because he had one of those funny little curved things. Would have looked like a poppy seed in there. Here he is when he's all done. Again, same thing. 7 months of aligners, 4 months of motion, less than a year. So that's what the patients expect now. And now that we have the SLX clear aligners, they're crystal clear. And we don't even have that fogginess or the striations because of the 3D printing. The way these are made, they don't have them. And you don't need the attachments. And we don't have to worry about it because we're doing the sagittal first. And so all the reasons we had attachments were to oppose elastic pull and everything else. And so we've accomplished that. Same reason we don't need multiple bracket prescriptions.
That's the thing I've enjoyed most so far is the decreased reliance on attachments. Because it seems that over time we've had an increased number of attachments that we're having to rely on over and over again in the aligner system. So now with this aligner technology, we're having a decrease of reliance on attachments. So we both use the 3-shape scanner in our office. And again, this is one of those things that enhances that 12-month protocol. And one of the one of the things that is the most remarkable thing about the 3Shape scanner that we didn't even think about when we onboarded it is our debond protocol. And this right here is the very reason why, if I only did this, I would have a 3Shape scanner. And so what we do now is we routinely scan, and then our tech removes the braces. And it can either be our in-house tech, or you can send it directly to the lab, and the lab will remove it for you. And they'll just push this little magic button over here, and it's just gone. And then you'll see her go through,
And that's how
take
fast
all
it
the
happens.
brackets, and that's how fast it happens. That's real time.
The only key here is you have to take the arch wire out before you scan.
The other neat thing is that if you're on a pre-debond appointment, and we've separated our bonding appointments into two now. If you're on a pre-debond appointment and you recognize that, oh, the upper one is slightly out, and instead of just detailing it, wasting time and bringing it back in for yet another appointment, you just detail it right there, put your arch wire in, and then you come to the scanner, they section the teeth, and you just do that little movement in the final aligner, and then you seat that. So you're not disappointing your patient, you're not having them come back for yet another appointment in your protocol.
So in our office, when I'm making those adjustments, the staff will write them down on the lab slip. And so you'll see in a second where they're going to pull up the screen with the interface on.
The only thing I wanted to highlight here is that if we have no movement that we have to do on the teeth, or nothing that we have to do in-house, it goes directly to the lab. We don't even fiddle with it. And the lab will take off all the brackets for you, and they'll fabricate your aligners for you. So the next time we see it, everything is delivered into the aligner, and the aligners are there. So this is our traditional debonding workflow. Everybody has variation. However, you'll see step one. That's an hour and 15 to hour and a half appointment. We used to have to make debond days. We used to exhaust the patients and put them through an hour and a half worth of frustration. And that interfered with us celebrating, because we always celebrate when we take brackets off. A assistant had to stay through lunch on these days, fabricate the retainers, and then the patient or the parent or the adult would have to come back yet again that afternoon to get their aligner. And how many times did they not show back up, and then they're without a retainer, and they're sitting around having all the negative things happen from that. So if you're not celebrating in your practice, do this. Get a red carpet. Rosemary Bray shared this with me, and it was really funny. She came to my practice. She said, "Good clinician, great staff. You're not fun. You got to be more fun." So this is our effort to be more fun. So celebrate. Go out and buy a red carpet and put it in place. So here's our new debonding protocol. It's either, remember we were talking about the 20-minute appointments earlier. This is just 2 30-minute, maybe 40-minute appointments. We could do this at 4:30 in the afternoon or 8:30 in the morning. We don't care anymore where it goes. I bond the retainers. I think Dave bonds his lower retainers at step 2. Do your scan, hit the lab, fabricate, and now nobody's staying over lunch. Nobody's getting taxed, because I don't have a dedicated lab assistant, a lab person in my office. Then they come back in a few weeks later, debond, deliver retainers, photos, and now the celebration, they're not exhausted on that celebration. This is what they look like in the mouth. And every single time they're fitting, they're doing great, and it's not a problem in our practice to just take the brackets off virtually and then fabricate retainers this way. All that's enabled by our scanners. The other nice thing is they get 2 aligners, because the one model is not destroyed during fabrication because it's printed with a good plastic material or acrylic material, and then so they get the 2 retainers, and then they also get to take the model home with them. So if they want to, if they lose 2 retainers, they just bring the model back to you, and you have your own built-in retainer for life program, and you can handle that any way you want. So we hope we've given you food for thought today about decreasing your treatment times, applying different technologies to do that, and we're happy to entertain some questions. Thank you very much.